And I think what we're talking about is creating a movement to move away from this insanity of war. War is insane. You have to start from that concept no matter where it happens. Sometimes there's some reasons for it, but if you really look deep, it's a form of some sort of insanity that, and of course it ends up with the insanity of creating nuclear weapons which have the ability to totally destroy all of civilization. I mean, how crazy can you get? How many nuclear weapons do you have to have in order to feel secure? So right now there are about 20 to 25,000 nuclear weapons on the planet, and now they're thinking about actually producing more or increasing the efficiency of some of our nuclear weapons stock. But in order to transform this culture of war into a culture of peace, we're talking about a gigantic job. And so everybody thinks, well, you know, what can I do, or what can our little group do to sort of contribute to that process of that transformation? Well, one of the reasons I'm fascinated by coming to SGI is because I know that the young people in SGI, not just here, but throughout the country and throughout the world, have the passion and the commitment because of your studies of humanity and of Buddhism to make a change that could be dramatic. And everybody say, well, yeah, what can I do? How was that? Well, it is no small job. And I really address the people in the audience who are considered like young people. My generation was very, very involved in creating the culture of war. Even though we may not have fought in it, we contributed to it. Our tax money went into it. Our nations and our media, our generation was sort of locked into it. And it's really hard to move that generation into making a passionate commitment to sort of moving away from that culture of war, and to transform it into a culture of peace is a gigantic job. Tell you just how gigantic it is. The military budget of this country right now, if you put in all the secret things and all the nuclear development which is developed by other departments, our military budget is approaching somewhere around $1 trillion. Some places they'll deny that and say, well, no, it's really only like $500 billion. But that doesn't include Iraq, it doesn't include Afghanistan, it doesn't include the development of nuclear weapons, which is handled by the Department of Energy, so it doesn't appear on the military budget. It doesn't include so many other, it doesn't include the amount of money spent by the CIA and 16 other intelligence agencies that are part of the war budget, because that information is generally considered secret. But if you put all of that together, you end up with a military budget that is the amount of money being spent for military stuff of somewhere around $1 trillion. Now that military budget exceeds the military budgets of all the countries on the entire planet put together. Now talk about some sort of insanity. Who are we defending ourselves against? Do we have $1 trillion budget to defend ourselves against Osama bin Laden? It's a joke. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a process to where we defend our country and other countries against terrorists and terrorism. But there's another way of looking at terrorism. You know, if you're a mom or a dad and you get up in the morning and there is no food for your children, that is terrorism. If you get up in the morning and in your village there are no people around to take care of the children because they've all died from HIV/AIDS, that's terrorism. Every day, 30,000 children die, preventable preventable, every single day, die from disease, no access to fresh and safe drinking water, HIV, AIDS, and so forth. Now, those are all, it's like another approach to what is terrorism. Now, in the year 2000, all the heads of state came together at the United Nations. And at that time, it was Bill Clinton, our president, presidents, and the heads of state of 190 countries. They came together at the United Nations to discuss that issue. And they put out a declaration called the Millennium Declaration. And the purpose of the Millennium Declaration was, it had a number of purposes. One was to recommit their countries to the United Nations and to work to make the United Nations the premier continuing organization working for a culture of peace in the world. That was their commitment in the year 2000. That was the basis of that declaration. But as part of that declaration, they also made a commitment to an agenda. And that agenda involves a commitment to achieve 8 goals by the year 2015. And they're called the Millennium Development Goals. Now, how many people here ever heard of that? We got a couple here, right. So here we have, a really sophisticated SGI audience committed to a culture of peace, and nobody in the audience ever heard of the United Nations Millennium Development Goal campaign. This is a campaign started in the year 2000 to be achieved by the year 2015 to cut the number of children dying every day by 50%. Preventable. To cut the number of people living in under $1 a day by 50%. To provide universal education for boys and girls worldwide. To provide a framework in which to raise the status of women and empower women to be part of creating a better world. There are 8 goals. I don't want to go over each one of them, but I think we had some material that we could get to you on the 8 Millennium Goals. We're now halfway through the Millennium Goals. That is, the goals were supposed to be done by 2015. To make it very simple, go home, get on your computer, and Google Millennium Development Goals. And you will be able to find out what the goals are, what every single country on earth is doing to achieve those goals, how much of those goals have been achieved. For example, there are 1.5 billion people on the planet that do not have access to fresh water, which means that people have to walk 6 or 7 miles sometimes to get water for their family or their children. The water bearers are the women. And in the process of going from the village to where they need to get the fresh water to bring it back for survival, they're subjected to violence and rape. Their children are not in school because the children sometimes have to help in providing the fresh water. 2.5 billion people on the planet do not have access to toilets. Now, we can build the most sophisticated nuclear weapons in the world to destroy an entire city in a matter of seconds, and we're not capable of providing toilets for people that don't have them and need them. There's something wrong somewhere. And that's the essence of moving from a culture of war to a culture of peace. Now, I believe we can make that change, and I think the reason we can make it is because we have in our power, particularly in this country, a structure that can help put these things on the agenda.